All right, today we're jumping into one of the most famous puzzles out there, the creation story in the book of Genesis. You know, it's a story most of us have heard, but wow, does it raise some seriously tough questions. I mean, let's just get right into it. How in the world can you have plants growing on day 3 when the sun and stars don't even show up until day 4? And what's the deal with light on day 1? Where did that come from? These are the kinds of questions that have been tripping people up for, well, centuries.
For a lot of people, these points seem to put the whole story in a head-on collision with modern science. But the source material for this explainer has this really fascinating idea. What if the key to unlocking the whole puzzle of Genesis isn't actually in Genesis? What if it's hiding somewhere else entirely?
Okay, so let's really lay out the problem here. We're talking about these apparent scientific glitches in Genesis chapter 1 that can be a real roadblock for pretty much everyone, whether you're a skeptic or a believer. And these are some pretty specific challenges, right? It sounds like the entire universe and Earth just popped into existence at the same time. You've got light, but no light bulbs, so to speak. You've got photosynthesis happening before the sun. And maybe the biggest one of all, what happened to the nearly 9 billion years between the Big Bang and Earth's formation? In the Genesis 1 story, that whole chunk of time is just gone. But this is where things get really interesting. This is where we pivot from the problem to a potential solution. And honestly, it comes from a place you might not expect. Let's take a look at this ancient interpretive key.
The whole argument here is that the book of Job, specifically chapters 38 and 39, gives us a totally different kind of creation account. It's not a neat, numbered list like Genesis. No, it's this dramatic, poetic description that actually fills in some of the crucial details that Genesis just kind of glosses over.
And this comparison just lays it out perfectly. Think of Genesis 1 as the highlight reel. It's the chronological summary of what got created. Job, on the other hand, is like the director's commentary. It jumps around, giving us these beautiful, poetic details about how it all went down. So they're not two different stories competing with each other. They're two parts of the same story. So with that in mind, let's use this Job framework to tackle that first big puzzle, the timeline. How do we make sense of the universe's creation and that massive multi-billion-year gap? Well, the first clue is right there in the very first verse. It's this Hebrew phrase, hashamayim, veha'arets. Now, it's usually translated as the heavens and the earth, which makes us think of, the sky and the ground. But linguistic scholars say that's not quite right. It was the ancient Hebrew way of saying the whole shebang, the entire physical universe, all matter, all energy, all of space and time. So Genesis 1:1 is talking about the beginning of everything. Okay, so if Genesis 1:1 is the creation of everything, what was happening for the next 9 billion years? Well, Job gives us this incredible clue. He alone stretches out the heavens. This suggests an active, ongoing process. This isn't a long nap. It's a period of cosmic construction, of expansion and fine-tuning, getting the universe ready for life. And when you put it all together, you get this new, really coherent timeline. First, you have the beginning of the entire cosmos in Genesis 1:1. Then, thanks to Job, you have this stretching out period, billions of years of cosmic development. And then, much later, Earth forms inside this universe that's already up and running. And all of a sudden, this ancient timeline starts to look a lot like our modern understanding of cosmology. Okay, now for the big one, the one that gets all the attention, the plants that supposedly grew in total darkness. Let's dig into the sun, the plants, and why perspective is everything. This is the question that trips everyone up, right? How could plants, which need photosynthesis to live, possibly exist for a whole day before the sun was even made? I mean, it seems like a flat-out contradiction. The solution that our source proposes is so simple, it's actually kind of brilliant. It all comes down to one single thing, point of view. It's all about asking, where is the camera as this story is being told? And believe it or not, Genesis tells us exactly where the camera is. The very next verse puts us right down on the surface of the early Earth. It's covered in water and it's shrouded in darkness. So this is not some view from outer space looking down, it's a view from the ground, looking up. And here it is. This is the aha moment, and it comes straight from Job. Why was it dark on the surface? It wasn't because the sun didn't exist yet. It's because, as Job tells us, the early Earth was wrapped in thick darkness, like it was wearing a thick coat of clouds. The sun was out there, shining away, but its light just couldn't break through that dense atmosphere. So let's just walk through this process. At first, the atmosphere is totally opaque.
No light gets through. Then, over time, it starts to thin out and becomes translucent. Now, enough diffused sunlight is getting to the surface for photosynthesis to kick off. That's your day 3, and that's when plants can appear. And then finally, the atmosphere becomes transparent. And for the very first time, from the surface of the Earth, you can look up and clearly see the sun, the moon, and the stars. And that is day 4. So the whole key is this. The sun, moon, and stars weren't created on day 4. They were already there the whole time. Day 4 is simply the moment they finally became visible from the story's point of view on the surface of the Earth. And just like that, the contradiction just vanishes. Now, this whole way of looking at it does more than just solve a neat little puzzle. It really points to a much bigger, more profound idea about how we can look at the world. It's this concept of 2 books that are actually telling one single story. It's a classic idea, sometimes called the 2 books doctrine. The thinking goes that we've been given 2 reliable books to read. There's the book of Scripture, what you might call special revelation, and then there's the book of nature, general revelation. And since they both come from the same author, they can't ultimately contradict each other. And what's so cool is that the book of Job is just packed with what our source calls discoverable miracles. It describes all these amazing phenomena: the water cycle, the laws of physics, the balance of ecosystems. They're all presented as incredible acts of creation, but they're also things that science can study and help us understand. And really, that's the bottom line. With this point of view, scientific discovery isn't a threat to these ancient texts. It's the opposite. The more we learn about the book of nature, the more it can actually light up the pages of the book of Scripture, and vice versa. And that kind of leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. The solution to this whole ancient puzzle didn't require us to change the text or to throw out science. All it took was finding the right perspective. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many of the other big conflicts we see, between ideas, between people, aren't really conflicts at all, just a different point of view waiting to be discovered?